She found the money I had hidden for years on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, tucked behind winter coats I never wore and boxes I hadn't opened since moving back home. I had kept that envelope out of sight for a reason. $20,000, saved slowly, carefully from overtime shifts and sacrifices no one ever noticed. It wasn't for anything reckless or selfish. It was my safety net, my way out, my proof to myself that I wasn't stuck forever. I never imagined the danger wouldn't come from strangers, but from my own sister. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. I searched calmly, then frantically, pulling everything apart until my hands were shaking. When I asked her if she'd been in my room, she didn't look surprised. She laughed it off, said she was just borrowing something, and promised we'd talk later. That was the moment my stomach dropped. By the time night fell, the house was empty, and my phone started lighting up with videos I didn't want to see. Music blaring, flashing lights, unfamiliar faces, bottles lining tables I recognized from our living room. My sister was hosting an all-night party, and I knew exactly how she paid for it. She didn't come home until morning. When she did, she looked exhausted but unapologetic, as if what she'd done was careless rather than cruel. She said she meant to replace the money. She said it was just one night. She said I was overreacting. Each sentence cut deeper than the last because none of them acknowledged what she'd really taken from me. It wasn't just cash. It was trust built over a lifetime of shared rooms, shared secrets, and shared promises we never thought we'd have to say out loud. The days that followed were worse than the night itself. Whispers replaced conversations. Our parents avoided eye contact, torn between anger and denial. Receipts surfaced, credit alerts pinged, and the full extent of the spending came into focus. There was no plan to repay me, no emergency that justified it, only impulse and entitlement that had been quietly growing for years. I started replaying old moments in my head, realizing how often my boundaries had been ignored and how easily I had forgiven it in the name of family. What changed our family forever wasn't the party or even the money. It was the realization that love doesn't protect you from betrayal, and shared blood doesn't guarantee respect. I stopped yelling because there was nothing left to say that hadn't already been proven. The silence that settled between us was heavier than any argument. In losing that envelope, I gained a painful clarity about who I was to the people closest to me. We still live under the same roof, but something essential is gone. Trust doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes quietly, the way mine did that night. And no amount of apologies or explanations has been able to bring it back to what it was before she opened my closet and took what she believed she was entitled to, changing our family in ways none of us can undo. $20,000 vanished from my closet without a sound, and the betrayal that followed didn't come from a stranger or a break-in, but from someone who knew me better than anyone else. I had hidden the envelope carefully, pushed behind clothes and old storage boxes, never thinking I needed to protect it from my own family. That money represented years of restraint, missed opportunities, and quiet planning for a future I wasn't ready to announce yet. When I reached into the space where it had always been and felt nothing, I knew something was wrong long before I understood how deeply it would hurt. I tried to stay rational at first, telling myself I must have moved it or forgotten where I put it. But the more I searched, the heavier the panic became. Drawers were emptied, shelves checked twice, and still there was nothing. When I finally confronted my sister, she reacted with a strange mix of defensiveness and humor, as if my fear was an inconvenience rather than a warning. She admitted she'd found the envelope by accident, her voice casual, almost proud. She promised it was temporary, that she had everything under control. I wanted to believe her, because believing her meant this wasn't a betrayal. It meant we were still sisters. That illusion didn't last long. By nightfall, my phone buzzed with messages and videos from people I barely knew. Music shook the walls of a house I recognized instantly. Our house. There were strangers laughing on our couch, drinks spilling onto the floor, lights flashing where family photos usually hung. The money wasn't gone because of desperation or need. It was gone because she wanted to impress her friends, because she believed she could take without consequence. Watching those videos felt like standing outside my own life, powerless to stop it from unraveling. When she finally came home, the apology was weak and rushed, wrapped in excuses that shifted blame instead of owning the damage. She said she would figure it out, that money comes and goes, that family should understand. What she didn't understand was that the real loss had nothing to do with numbers. She had crossed a line that couldn't be erased with promises. Every shared memory suddenly felt fragile, as if I had misread our relationship all along. The aftermath was slow and suffocating. Our parents struggled to address it directly, choosing silence over accountability. Tension lived in every room, unspoken but always present. I became guarded in my own home, locking doors that never needed locks before. Trust, once broken, doesn't shatter loudly. It cracks quietly and spreads until it changes how you see everything. The money was never fully recovered, but the lesson arrived in full. Betrayal from inside your own home reshapes you in ways you don't expect. It teaches you that closeness doesn't equal safety, and love doesn't excuse violation. The closet is empty now, but the space where trust once lived feels even more hollow. A reminder that the deepest wounds are often inflicted by the people who know exactly where to strike. One envelope sat quietly hidden in my closet, untouched for years, and in my mind it symbolized stability, patience, and trust. I never imagined that a single party, planned in secrecy and fueled by impulse, could unravel all of that in one night. When I realized the envelope was gone, there was no dramatic confrontation or immediate chaos. Instead, there was a slow, sinking awareness that something precious had slipped through my fingers, not by accident, but by choice. My sister didn't deny it for long. She admitted she'd found the envelope while searching for something else, her tone light, almost careless. She spoke as if discovering $20,000 was a stroke of luck rather than a violation. I listened, stunned, as she explained how she'd already made plans, how friends were coming over, how it would just be for one night. The words blurred together because none of them answered the question pounding in my head. How could she think this was hers to use? That night felt endless. Music echoed through the house while strangers filled rooms that once felt safe. Laughter spilled into hallways, drinks flowed freely, and the atmosphere pulsed with celebration that had nothing to do with me. I stayed locked in my room, staring at the empty space in my closet, realizing that what hurt most wasn't the noise downstairs, but the certainty that my trust was being spent just as recklessly as the money. Every sound reminded me that the line between us had already been crossed. By morning, the house was a mess, and so were we. My sister looked drained, but defiant, brushing off the damage as something that could be fixed later. She spoke about replacing the money as if it were an inconvenience, not a responsibility. I searched her face for regret and found only irritation that I was upset. That was when the reality settled in. This wasn't a mistake born from desperation. It was entitlement wrapped in familiarity, confidence built on the assumption that family would forgive anything. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Our parents avoided taking sides, hoping time would soften the edges of what had happened. But time only sharpened them. Every interaction felt strained, every shared space uncomfortable. I began to question past moments, wondering how often my boundaries had been quietly ignored because I never made them loud enough. The envelope had been more than money. It had been a test of respect that no one realized was happening until it failed. That one night changed how I understood family. I learned that trust isn't protected by blood or shared history. It survives only when people choose to honor it. Watching my sister move on as if nothing fundamental had been broken forced me to accept a truth I didn't want to face. Some damage can't be undone, no matter how familiar the faces involved. One envelope, one party, one sister, and a version of our relationship that no longer exists, gone before the sun even rose. When family crosses the line, the damage cuts deeper than any argument ever could. And I learned that the night my sister's party cost us everything we thought we understood about each other. I had always believed that blood created an unspoken boundary, a quiet agreement that some things were simply off limits. My savings were one of those things. Hidden away and never discussed, the money represented years of restraint, personal sacrifice, and hope for a future that felt just within reach. I trusted that no one in my family would touch it, not because I had asked them not to, but because I never imagined I'd need to. The realization didn't come with shouting or chaos. It came with an empty space where certainty used to live. When I discovered the money was gone, the house felt unfamiliar, like something had shifted beneath my feet. My sister admitted what she'd done without hesitation, explaining that she wanted to throw a party, that her friends were counting on her, that it was only for one night. She spoke as if the boundary she'd crossed had never existed, as if my savings were a shared resource rather than something deeply personal. In that moment, I understood that we were not standing on the same side of respect. The party itself felt like a public display of private betrayal. Music shook the walls, laughter spilled into every room, and strangers treated our home like a playground. I stayed out of sight, listening to the noise, realizing that each sound was funded by something I had protected with care. What hurt wasn't just the loss of money, but the knowledge that my sister could celebrate so easily while I felt stripped of control in my own space. The line had been crossed, and no one seemed to acknowledge it. Mourning didn't bring clarity or remorse. Instead, it brought excuses. She said she'd make it right, that I was overreacting, that families shouldn't fight over money. Those words revealed the deepest wound of all. To her, the problem wasn't what she had done, but how I reacted to it. The conversation never reached the heart of the issue because she didn't see the boundary as real in the first place. The aftermath lingered quietly. Our parents struggled to intervene, hoping time would soften the tension, but the silence only made things heavier. Every shared meal felt forced, every glance loaded with unspoken disappointment. I began to see our relationship differently, recognizing patterns I had once ignored. Small dismissals, casual entitlement, assumptions that forgiveness was guaranteed simply because we were family. That night cost us more than money. It cost us the version of our relationship built on trust and mutual respect. When family crosses the line, it forces you to grow in uncomfortable ways. I learned that love doesn't excuse violations, and closeness doesn't eliminate the need for boundaries. Some losses can't be recovered, not because they're too large, but because they reveal truths you can't unsee. The party ended by morning, but the impact stayed, reshaping our family into something quieter, more distant, and forever changed by the moment a line was crossed and never fully repaired. I never thought I would have to say the words out loud, but my sister spent my secret savings on her friends, and everything between us shifted the moment I realized it. The money had been hidden carefully, not because I was ashamed of it, but because it represented something private and fragile. $20,000, earned slowly through discipline and sacrifice, was meant to be my quiet exit plan, my proof that I had control over my future. It wasn't something I shared, because some dreams feel safer when they're kept close. When I noticed the envelope was missing, my first reaction was confusion rather than fear. I retraced my steps, replayed memories, convinced myself I must have moved it. Only when I asked my sister if she'd been in my room did the truth begin to surface. Her reaction wasn't panic or guilt. It was casual, almost playful, as if she were confessing to borrowing a sweater. She said she needed it for one night, that her friends were coming over, that it would be unforgettable. I remember standing there, realizing she had already decided before I ever had a chance to say no. The party unfolded without me. Music thundered through the walls, laughter echoed into spaces that once felt calm, and strangers filled the house like they belonged there. Videos appeared on my phone from people I barely knew, showing drinks, decorations, and excess funded by something I had protected for years. Watching those clips felt surreal, like observing my own life from a distance. Every smile in those videos felt like it came at my expense, and every beat of music felt like another reminder that my trust had been treated as disposable. When she finally came home, the house was wrecked, and so was any illusion I had left. She insisted she would pay me back, brushed off my anger, and acted offended that I was upset. She couldn't understand why I wasn't impressed or why I didn't see it as harmless fun. What she failed to see was that it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the ease with which she crossed a boundary and assumed forgiveness would follow automatically. The days after were filled with quiet tension. Conversations became short and careful. Our parents tried to smooth things over, hoping it would fade with time, but something had already snapped. I began locking my door, guarding my space, questioning moments from our past that I had once brushed aside. Trust doesn't disappear instantly. It fades as realization sets in, as patterns become clear, as excuses stop sounding believable. What tore us apart wasn't the party itself, but the understanding that she never truly saw my savings as mine. To her, it was available, usable, and replaceable. To me, it was years of effort and a future I was building alone. That difference in perspective created a divide that apologies couldn't bridge. The money was gone in one night, but the fallout lingered far longer, leaving behind a relationship altered by betrayal and the painful knowledge that some lines, once crossed, permanently change how you see the people closest to you.